Christmas morning at my parents' house always carried the weight of judgment, like walking into a courtroom where the verdict had already been decided. The living room glittered with a massive Christmas tree, its branches heavy with glittering, expensive ornaments, and the presents stacked underneath were wrapped in the kind of paper that cost more than my monthly rent. And there I sat, on the edge of the armchair, hunched over my laptop, quietly occupying my usual role as the family disappointment. "Rachel, it's Christmas!" Mom's voice cut through the room, sharp and rehearsed, a disapproval she wore like a perfectly tailored outfit. "Can you put that away for just one day?" I looked up, blinking against the glare of the screen. "Almost done. 2 minutes," I said. 2 minutes again? Daniel scoffed from the couch, the picture of smug superiority. He wore crisp designer pajamas that matched the rest of the room's polished aesthetic. "Some of us actually know the value of family time." He was 35, 3 years older than me, a top cardiologist at one of the city's most prestigious hospitals, married to another doctor, living in a home that cost more than most people make in a lifetime. He embodied every hope and ambition my parents had ever pinned on a child. I, in contrast, had chosen my own path. Ashley, my younger sister, 28 and climbing the corporate ladder as a high-powered attorney, chimed in next. Her voice carried that sing-song mockery that made me feel smaller than I already did. "Rachel's on her computer again," she announced, a smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. Her engagement to a hedge fund manager only made her arrogance shine brighter. Dad entered then, carrying a tray of coffee, setting it down with a deliberate heaviness that made the room tense. His jaw was tight, his eyes narrow. "We need to talk," he said, settling into his chair across from me. Mom sat beside him, a picture of poised judgment. Daniel and Ashley leaned in, closing the circle like a preemptive intervention. "About what?" I asked, shutting my laptop finally. "About your life," Dad said, calm but firm. "Rachel, you're 32, and you're still pretending this whole tech company thing is serious." "I am running a tech company," I replied, voice steady but tinged with the frustration I'd learned to keep in check over the years. Daniel chuckled, the sound dripping with condescension. "Come on, Rachel. You've been saying that for 9 years. At some point, you have to face reality." I had founded Quantum Leap Technologies at 23, straight out of Stanford, armed with a computer science degree and a vision for a future my family hadn't understood. They had wanted me to follow in Daniel's footsteps, pursue medicine, and live a life that looked perfect on paper. Choosing tech had earned their quiet disappointment, polite smiles that barely concealed what they really thought. "My company is thriving," I said, keeping my tone even, but inside a flicker of defiance burned. Mom shook her head slowly, her eyes glinting with disbelief. "Sweetheart, if it was truly thriving, you'd be able to afford more. You're stuck in that tiny apartment, driving that old Toyota. You never go on vacation, and your wardrobe, well, it's from Target." I met her gaze calmly. "I'm happy with my life," I said. But Dad, leaning back and folding his arms, wasn't convinced. "You're in denial. We've watched you struggle for nearly a decade. We've been patient, supportive even, but enough is enough." Ashley leaned forward, her expression a mix of concern and accusation. "We're genuinely worried about you. You're not dating anyone, you have no real savings, and you work 80-hour weeks for what exactly?" I felt a flicker of exasperation, wanting to throw numbers and facts at them, but I forced myself to stay composed. Quantum Leap had 28 employees. Our cloud infrastructure technology was revolutionary, in use by 63 enterprise clients, including 4 Fortune 100 companies. Our revenue last year had been $340 million, and we'd raised $800 million in venture capital from Sequoia, Andreessen Horowitz, and Kleiner Perkins. Yet none of that mattered in this room of judgment. Mom, ever practical, pulled out a folder from the side table. "We've set up interviews for you," she said, a faint note of urgency in her voice. Daniel knows people in the hospital's IT department. It's a real job. Salary of $70,000, full benefits, something solid. I already have a real job, I said, attempting patience. Dad shook his head, his tone final and unwavering. No, Rachel, you have a hobby that you've convinced yourself is a career. There's a difference. Daniel stood up, straightening with the authority of his profession, his doctor voice taking over, ready to lecture as he always did. The circle tightened, and for a moment, it felt like I was the accused in a trial where the jury had already decided my fate. The one he used with difficult patience. Rachel, I'm going to be very direct with you because someone needs to be. Your tech company fantasy is hurting you. It's preventing you from building actual stability. You need to let it go. I don't want to let it go. Of course you don't, because you've invested 9 years of your life into it. But that's the sunk cost fallacy. Just because you've wasted 9 years doesn't mean you should waste more. The word wasted hung in the air. My time hasn't been wasted. Ashley sighed dramatically. Rachel, look around this room. Daniel's a cardiologist. I'm a senior associate at a major law firm. Mom and Dad built successful careers. Even our cousins have real jobs. You're the only one still chasing the Silicon Valley fantasy. Plenty of people build successful tech companies. And 95% of startups fail, Daniel countered. You're not Mark Zuckerberg, you're not Elon Musk. You're a 32-year-old woman with no savings, no retirement plan, and no future unless you make a change now. Mom reached over and took my hand. Her grip was gentle, but her words were not. We love you. We want what's best for you. And what's best is for you to stop this nonsense and get a real job with a real salary and real benefits. My company is real. Then prove it, Dad challenged. Show us something, anything. Show us evidence that Quantum Leap is more than just another failed startup waiting to happen. I could have shown them everything. The term sheets, the client contracts, the patent portfolio, the revenue reports, the cap cable showing my 23% equity stake, the financial projections that had Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley fighting to lead our IPO. Instead, I said, I can't. Not yet. The room erupted in frustrated groans. Not yet, Daniel mimicked. It's always not yet with you. There is no yet, Rachel. There's just you refusing to accept reality. When I was your age, Dad said, I had already bought my first house. I had savings. I had a career path. You have none of those things. I have different priorities. Delusions aren't priorities, Ashley snapped. Rachel, this is embarrassing. Do you know what I tell people when they ask about you? I don't know what to say. Oh, my sister runs a tech company, but then they look it up and find nothing because you're not running anything. You're playing pretend. I kept my expression neutral. Quantum Leap's public profile was deliberately minimal. We operated in the enterprise space, not consumer tech. We didn't need flashy websites or social media presence. Our clients found us through industry channels and word of mouth among CTOs. But explaining that would only invite more questions I wasn't ready to answer. Take the job interviews, Mom pleaded. Please, for us, just go talk to them. I appreciate the concern. Stop saying that, Dad's voice rose. Stop with the corporate non-answers. Stop pretending everything's fine when it clearly isn't. You're failing, Rachel. You've been failing for 9 years, and we can't watch it anymore. The words landed like physical blows, but I'd heard variations of this speech so many times that they'd lost their power to hurt. My family had decided who I was 9 years ago. Nothing I said would change their minds. Only evidence would. And tomorrow morning, they'd have all the evidence they needed. I understand your concerns, I said carefully, but I'm not taking the interviews. Daniel threw up his hands. Of course you're not, because you're committed to this delusion. You know what? Fine. Phil, hit rock bottom. Maybe that's what it will take for you to wake up. Daniel, Mom warned. No, Mom, someone needs to say it. Rachel is throwing her life away. She's 32 years old with nothing to show for the last decade. No house, no husband, no children, no career. Just a laptop and a fantasy. I stood up, laptop under my arm. I should go. Sit down, Dad ordered. We're not done. I think we are. Rachel and Peterson, you sit down right now. I was 32 years old. I hadn't responded to that tone in over a decade. I didn't start now. Merry Christmas, I said. I'll see you later. Ashley blocked my path to the door. You're really going to walk out on Christmas? Yes. To go where? Back to your sad little apartment to work on your sad little fake company? The apartment in question was a 3-bedroom penthouse in downtown San Francisco that I'd bought for cash 2 years ago, but Ashley had never visited, so she still imagined me in the studio I'd lived in at 24. Something like that, I said. I walked past her. Mom followed me to the door. Rachel, please, we're trying to help you. I know, but I don't need the help you're offering. You need some kind of help. This can't continue. I turned to face her. What can't continue? This pretending? This denial? You're not a tech entrepreneur, sweetheart. You're a smart woman who made a mistake 9 years ago and is too stubborn to admit it. What if I'm not wrong? She smiled sadly. Oh, honey, you are, but you'll figure that out eventually. We just hope it's not too late when you do. I left. The drive back to San Francisco took 90 minutes. My phone buzzed constantly. Family group chat messages about how concerned everyone was, how difficult I was being, how I needed to face reality. I silenced the notifications. My co-founder and CTO, James, had texted earlier. IPO roadshow went perfectly. Morgan Stanley confirmed. Tomorrow changes everything. Tomorrow was December 26th. Quantum Leap Technologies would go public on the NASDAQ at 9:30 a.m. Eastern, with priced at $68 per share. The company's post-IPO valuation would be $7.2 billion. My 23% stake would be worth approximately $1.65 billion. I'd be one of the youngest self-made female billionaires in the country. And my family had just spent Christmas morning trying to convince me to interview for a $70,000 a year IT position. The irony was almost funny. I spent Christmas evening in my home office reviewing final IPO documents with our lawyers. Everything was ready. The institutional investors were locked in, the media strategy was set. Tomorrow morning, CNBC would cover the opening bell. Bloomberg would run a feature on the company. The Wall Street Journal had already published a profile. My phone rang around 11 p.m. Daniel? I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. Finally, I answered. What? I'm calling to apologize, he said stiffly. Dad asked me to. I was too harsh earlier. Okay. But, Rachel, I meant what I said. You need to face reality. This tech thing isn't working. It's never going to work. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can start building a real life. Is that the apology? It's the truth. Look, I know it's hard to admit you failed. I haven't failed. You have. You just can't see it yet. You're too close to it. But trust me, as someone who actually has succeeded in life, I can tell you you're on the wrong path. Take the hospital interviews, get a stable job, start contributing to a 401k, build actual security. I have security. He laughed. Right. Your 12-year-old Toyota and Target clothes really screams security. I could have told him about the Tesla and Porsche in my building's garage, about the investment portfolio worth $40 million independent of Quantum Leap, about the vacation home in Lake Tahoe I bought last year. Instead, I said, I need to go. Big day tomorrow. Doing what? More pretentio work? Something like that. I hung up. At 6 a.m. Pacific, I was awake. The IPO would happen at 6:30 my time. I'd be watching from my home office, connected via video conference to the NASDAQ opening bell ceremony in New York, where James and our CFO would be representing the company. My phone buzzed with messages from investors, board members, early employees. Everyone was excited. This was the culmination of 9 years of work. At 6:15, I turned on CNBC. The anchors were discussing the day's major market events. And then, coming up after the break, we'll be covering the biggest IPO of the year. Quantum Leap Technologies, the cloud infrastructure company you've probably never heard of, is about to make its founder a billionaire. Stay with us. I smiled. At 6:28, my family group chat exploded. Mom, Rachel, is this your company? Ashley, there's a tech company going public called Quantum Leap. That's yours? Daniel, this has to be a different Quantum Leap. Rachel's company is just a startup. I didn't respond. I was watching the screen. The NASDAQ ceremony began. James stood on the platform, holding the ceremonial gavel. The camera panned across our leadership team, all of them beaming. Quantum Leap Technologies begins trading this morning after pricing its IPO at $68 per share, the CNBC anchor announced. The company, founded by Rachel Peterson 9 years ago, has quietly built one of the most impressive cloud infrastructure platforms in the industry. Post-IPO valuation, $7.2 billion. The ticker appeared on screen, QLPT. The opening trade was $72 per share. The stock immediately jumped to $78. My phone started ringing. Dad, Daniel, Ashley. I ignored them all. The CNBC segment continued. They showed a photo of me, professional headshot from last year. Rachel Peterson, just 32 years old, is now one of the youngest self-made female billionaires in the United States. Her 23% stake in Quantum Leap is currently worth approximately $1.8 billion. By 7 a.m., the stock was trading at $84. By 8 a.m., $91. My doorbell rang at 8:30. I opened it to find Daniel standing there, still in his pajamas. He'd driven 90 minutes from our parents' house. "Is it real?" he asked. "Yes, $7.2 billion? As of an hour ago, it's up to $8.1 billion. The stock's performing well." He stared at me. "You're a billionaire." "Approximately, though most of it's locked up in shares I can't sell for 6 months." "But how? Why didn't you tell us?" "Would you have believed me?" He opened his mouth, closed it, as we both knew the answer. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He walked into my penthouse, seeing it for the first time. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, original art on the walls, furniture that cost more than his monthly mortgage. "How long have you lived here?" 2 years. "And you let us think you were in a studio apartment." "You assumed I was in a studio apartment. I never corrected you." He sat down heavily on my couch. "Why?" "Because the moment I told you the truth, everything would change. And I wanted to wait until the change was undeniable, public, irrefutable. We've been trying to get you job interviews." "I know. We called you a failure." "I know that too." He put his head in his hands. "Oh my God, Rachel, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "Okay." "No, not okay. I was horrible to you for years. We all were. And you were building this the whole time?" "Yes." "Why didn't you defend yourself? Why didn't you show us proof?" "Because I shouldn't have needed to. You should have trusted me. You should have believed in me. Instead, you decided I was delusional and spent 9 years trying to convince me to give up." He looked up at me with red eyes. "What do I do now?" "Whatever you want, but I'm not interested in pretending yesterday didn't happen." "I don't want to pretend. I want to, I don't know, make it right somehow." "You can't." "So that's it? We're done?" "I didn't say that, but the relationship we had is over. If we're going to have any relationship going forward, it needs to be built on who I actually am, not who you assumed I was." He nodded slowly. "I can do that." "Can you?" "Because who I actually am is the same person I was yesterday. The only thing that changed is the public validation. And if you only respect me because of the numbers, then you don't actually respect me at all." That landed hard. My phone buzzed. A text from James. "Stock at $97. This is insane. We did it." I replied, "We did. Celebrate for me. I'm dealing with family." Daniel was still sitting on my couch looking lost. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything. Can I tell you something honestly? Sure. I'm jealous. Incredibly jealous. You've accomplished something I never will. And I think that's part of why I was so cruel. Because if you succeeded, it would mean I wasn't the family success story anymore. At least he was being honest. I need to take some calls, I said. You should probably go. He stood up. Will I see you again? Eventually, but I need space right now. He nodded and left. Over the next few hours, my phone exploded. Texts and calls from family, friends I hadn't spoken to in years, former classmates, distant relatives. Everyone suddenly wanted to reconnect. The ones I didn't answer, people who'd dismissed me, people who'd called my company a fantasy, people who only cared now that the success was visible. The ones I did answer, the handful of friends who'd supported me even when they didn't fully understand what I was building. Mom called at noon. I answered. Rachel, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I'm your mother. I should have believed in you. Yes. I'm so sorry. I know. Can we talk? Really talk. Not today. I have interviews with Bloomberg and Forbes scheduled. Maybe later this week. Of course, whatever works for you. She sounded small. It was strange hearing her like that. My mother was always so confident, so certain she knew best. Mom, I need to go. I love you. I love you too. But love isn't enough. Not after 9 years. I hung up. The media requests were overwhelming. Every major business publication wanted an interview. TBC wanted me for a live segment. Fortune wanted to do a cover story. I accepted the most prestigious ones and declined the rest. The Forbes interview ran the next day. From family disappointment to billionaire, Rachel Peterson's quantum leak to success. The article was thorough. It covered my childhood, my decision to choose tech over medicine, my family's disapproval. It quoted anonymous sources who confirmed that Peterson's family repeatedly pressured her to abandon her company and pursue traditional employment. It also mentioned that I'd turned down multiple acquisition offers from Amazon, Microsoft, and Oracle before deciding to go public instead. The article went viral. Within hours, I was trending on Twitter. People shared their own stories of family members who dismissed their dreams. The #TrustYourVision started trending. My family's reaction evolved in stages. First, more apologies. Long, rambling voicemails and texts about how sorry they were, how wrong they'd been, how proud they were now. Second, requests. Could I help Daniel invest in the market? Could I connect Ashley with venture capital contacts? Could I help my cousin get a job in tech? I didn't respond to most of them. Third, subtle resentment. Comments from extended family about how lucky I'd been, how timing had worked out for me, how anyone could succeed with enough luck. That was when I knew nothing fundamental had changed. They still couldn't accept that I'd succeeded through skill, vision, and relentless work. They needed to attribute it to luck to maintain their worldview. 2 weeks after the IPO, I agreed to have dinner with my parents. We met at a nice restaurant in San Francisco. They were dressed up nervous. "Thank you for seeing us," Dad said. "Of course." The first 30 minutes were awkward. Small talk about the weather, the restaurant, anything but the obvious. Finally, Mom broke. "Rachel, we need to talk about Christmas." "Okay." "We were horrible to you. Absolutely horrible. And I don't know how to make it right." "You can't make it right. What's done is done." Dad leaned forward. "But we can do better going forward. We can support you. We can—" "Dad, you didn't support me when it mattered. You waited until the success was public and undeniable. That's not support. That's just joining the winning team." "That's not fair," he protested. "We were worried about you. We thought we were helping." "You thought you knew better than I did about my own life. There's a difference between concern and control." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "What do you want from us?" "Honestly, I don't know. I'm still figuring that out. Do you want us in your life at all?" I want parents who respect me, who trust my judgment, who don't need external validation before they believe in me. We can be those parents, Dad said. We can change. Maybe, but I'm not going to forget the last 9 years just because the numbers got bigger. The dinner ended without resolution. They wanted forgiveness. I wasn't ready to give it. 3 months after the IPO, Quantum Leap stock had stabilized at $112 per share. The company was now worth $9.8 billion. My stake was worth approximately $2.25 billion. I'd started a venture capital firm focused on female founders and enterprise tech. I sat on 3 corporate boards. I was being courted by political campaigns who wanted my endorsement and donations. My family continued reaching out. Daniel sent monthly emails, updates on his life, apologies for his behavior, invitations to family events. Mom and Dad called weekly. Ashley sent occasional texts. I responded politely but distantly. I attended a few family events, but there was a wall between us now that hadn't existed before. Or maybe it had always been there, and I just stopped pretending it wasn't. The story continued to resonate. I was invited to speak at Stanford, MIT, Harvard. Young entrepreneurs reached out constantly, sharing stories of their own dismissive families. In my speeches, I always said the same thing. Success on your own terms is worth more than success on someone else's terms, and the people who truly believe in you will believe in you before the world validates you, not after. 6 months after the IPO, I ran into Daniel at a tech conference. He was there with his hospital's innovation team, looking uncomfortable in the startup casual environment. Rachel, hi. Hi. I didn't know you'd be here. I'm keynoting tomorrow. Oh, that's great. An awkward pause. How's the family? I asked. They're okay. Everyone's adjusting. Adjusting to what? He smiled. Riley, to the fact that the family failure is actually the biggest success any of us will ever achieve. At least he was being honest. I'm trying to do better, he said. I really am. I've been reading about cognitive bias and how we form assumptions about people, and I realized I never actually looked at what you were building. I just assumed it was nothing because it didn't fit my model of success. That's accurate. Is there any chance... He stopped. Never mind. What? Is there any chance we can rebuild something? Not the relationship we had, I know that's gone, but something new. I thought about it. Maybe, I said, but it has to be real. No more assumptions. No more dismissals. If you don't understand something I'm doing, you ask instead of judging. I can do that. Can you? Because it's easy to say now, when the success is visible, but the real test is whether you'd believe in the next thing I do, even before it's validated. He nodded slowly. You're right, and I don't know if I've earned that trust back yet. You haven't, but maybe I can. Maybe. It was a small bridge, but it was something, because the truth was I'd succeeded. The company had gone public, the validation was complete, my family had been completely, undeniably wrong about everything. But that success tasted hollow when celebrated alone, and while I couldn't forget the past or pretend it hadn't happened, maybe I could build something new, something based on who I actually was, not who they'd assumed I was. 1 year after the IPO, Quantum Leap had expanded into new markets and acquired 2 smaller companies. The stock was trading at $134. My net worth had crossed $3 billion. I'd started a foundation focused on supporting women in STEM from non-traditional backgrounds. I'd invested in 43 startups, 37 of them founded by women or underrepresented minorities. My relationship with my family remained complicated. We had dinner occasionally. We attended major events. Daniel and I had built something like a friendship, though it bore little resemblance to a sibling relationship. My parents tried, but there were still moments when I could see them struggling with the reality of who I'd become. The moral of the story, if there is one, isn't that I proved my family wrong, though I did. It's that I proved myself right, and that mattered more. The day Dad told me to quit pretending to be an entrepreneur, he was expressing what everyone in my family believed. They were certain I was delusional, certain they understood reality better than I did, certain my dreams were destined to fail. They were wrong about all of it. And while the $7.2 billion IPO was satisfying, the real victory was simpler. I'd built something meaningful. I'd changed an industry. I'd created jobs and opportunities. I trusted my vision when literally everyone around me said I was wrong. That was worth more than any amount of money. Though I'll admit the money did help make the point undeniable. When CNBC reported that Quantum Leap was the largest tech IPO of the year, while my family sat at Christmas breakfast with their coffee cups frozen mid-air, that was the moment 9 years of dismissal and doubt crystallized into one perfect instance of vindication. They'd wanted me to interview for a $70,000 IT job. Instead, I'd built a $7.2 billion company. The difference between those two numbers wasn't just money. It was the distance between who they'd assumed I was and who I actually am. And that distance, it turned out, was worth 7.2.